Hey guys, welcome back to Vertical Momentum. I am your host, Richard Kaufman, also known as the Comeback Coach. Guys, make sure you smash that subscribe button and that notification button because you're going to want to share this episode because this episode is going to knock your socks off. This episode is amazing. We're going to be talking a lot of different things. PTSD, we're going to talk about planning in life and in business with a retired Command Master Chief, author, speaker. He does it all. He's the Swiss Army knife. He does everything. David, brother, welcome to the show.
Hey, man, thanks. Hey, you forgot one part.
All right, what I forget?
You forgot the part that I'm a Miami Dolphins fan since 1970.
Yeah, well, I don't want him clicking off that quick. So
but you know what? There's some mental health work that goes along with being a Dolphins fan all these years.
Yeah, you definitely got to learn how to be resilient if you're going to be a Dolphins fan.
Right
so
on.
Saying that, my first question is because I have struggled with PTSD. Now I believe it went from PTSD to post-traumatic growth. So what is your definition of resiliency?
Sure. So, I struggled with this, especially when I was a command chief. So I did 3 command billets over 8 years, three major installations. The last one was a large chunk of the U.S. with the intercontinental ballistic missile. So a lot of people, a lot going on, a lot of people in and out of combat zones, myself included. We'll talk a little bit about that. And people used to always say, Chief or Dave, can you come and talk about resilience, or how do you see resilience? So to your question, and I would struggle with it, and I would say, boy, resilience, is it almost a trigger word? Because if you say you don't have resilience, then you confuse somebody, right? Because we were talking about earlier, everybody wants the checklist or the SOP to kind of get through things. What are the 10 ways to be resilient? So I started to walk that back a little bit, and I thought, well, what are the problems that we have? So we have a suicide problem. We have a PTSD problem, which we can talk about a little more in depth with how people struggle understanding people with PTSD and that communication piece. And then how does that fall into being resilient? Either prior to having PTSD, just taking care of yourself on a day-to-day basis, or after you have PTSD, how you deal with your demons, where they sit, and how you deal with them when they stick their little ugly heads out.
Okay, now I love that. Like you said, we're going to take a really deep dive into it. Now you did. How many years did you do in the military?
30.
All right. So now most of our listeners are military, and a lot of them go to become entrepreneurs. So
Sure.
We call them entrepreneurs.
Sure.
And we have a lot of entrepreneurs that watch this show. Now, for me, like one of my friends, Sergeant Nick, says, when a person gets out of the military, either male or female, most of us don't do careers. Most of us do, 4 or 5 year hitch. So, when we get out, we don't have a career anymore. We don't have a job. We have no mission. And let's be honest, when you step off the base, military doesn't give a shit about you. The
True.
phone stops ringing, and all of a sudden you're on an island by yourself. And for me, and people that know me know that I did 23 years between National Guard and Army time. But when I got hurt on duty and I lost my vision, you can't see, you can't shoot. So we don't need you. And they booted me out or medically retired me. And I didn't know who Richard was. I spent my whole career being trying to be the ultimate soldier, Sergeant Kaufman. Now I don't know who Richard is. And that was the day that I attempted suicide, Memorial Day, 2012. So please talk about the transitioning and what it's like and how it affects people.
Sure. So from the day you walk into the military, everything is kind of there, right? Somebody tells you when to wake up, when to get to point A, point B. You're always going to get your flu shot. You're always going to get your training. And if you and quite frankly, I made a joke one time. I said, you know what? If I ever get fat, the Air Force will make me lose weight. And somebody said, that's a great attitude to have. Well, actually, it's not, because you almost create a dependency there that makes you lose your civilian resiliency, right? And so you walk out into the civilian world, be it 30 years or 3, Rick, honestly. I mean, it's the same. But you walk out in the civilian world, the language is different. How they approach you is different. Nobody has a clue at Walmart what a command chief master sergeant is. Quite frankly, they don't care. And there certainly isn't no parking spot out front, is there? So so you're back in the mix. And so how do you work through that? Um, Let me give you a couple of things, and it kind of piggybacks on where I was headed in the beginning. We as veterans have to understand a couple of things, and I'm going to tell you a story that will probably directly relate to you. But we as veterans have got to realize that we need help. That's the first and foremost thing. When you talk about resilience and you talk about transitioning, and I'm not talking about just mental health help. I'm talking about help getting a job, help getting a house, help getting rent, help with budgets, all of this stuff that was a lot easier when we were in that we're not good at. We need to be able to raise our hands as a retired grunt 11 Bravo, infantryman, and say there's a couple of things, and I write about this in the book. There's a couple of things. As much as we don't want to have them, we've got them, and those are called emotions. And those emotions drive certain needs. And a lot of times we want to be tougher than the need, and we want to push that down. We have a hard time raising our hand and saying we need help. I quit drinking 4.5 years ago. It's the best decision I ever made in my life, and it's really cleared my head up to the point where I've realized I should have been adding people into my resiliency checklist. I'm going to talk about this. I told you I'm speaking this week, and I'm going to talk about it. I think a lot of suicide, when we go back and look at suicide, the checklist has gotten really short. I think for some of us that were older, when we have a problem, we had family in there. You had your immediate family, or you had friends, or you might even have had a counselor or something in your life. Now that checklist is really short, and somehow on there, just the solution to a short-term problem, somehow suicide has gotten on that checklist. And when people get to that point and they run that checklist, they either attempt or they complete suicide, and it's sad. So what's the data to back that up? Well, 22 a day right now. I just got a note from a friend of mine that knows an Army guy that's a Ranger, 42 years old, was doing pretty well. You'd have thought coming out, opened his own business, was doing pretty well, starting to make some money, getting some traction with it. Everything was looking good. And just a week and a half ago, he killed himself. And I would argue that as much as we try to fill those voids of that camaraderie, that team need, the having the battle buddy or the wingman next to you, all of those things, when that all goes away, we don't completely fill it with the right thing. And I think that we think that people aren't qualified to talk to us. That's the PTSD conversation, right? When those demons are crawling around in your head from PTSD and they start to come out, people that have no idea why you have PTSD, what your triggers are, and they think that your emotions are inappropriate, their first reaction is to run away. My wife's been married to me for 30 years. She's been with me since I was in Mogadishu, Somalia, all the way through the end of being in the surge in Iraq. She's been through all of it. I had a trigger the other night, and she physically got up and got farther away from me and distanced herself. And I had to ask her not to do that. So, and that's a pretty mature relationship. This is a conversation about this is happening to me. This is how I'm feeling. And it still made her uncomfortable. So, but there's people out there that aren't uncomfortable. There's people out there that can help. They just don't look like us. So we tend not to integrate. I'll give you a story that I think everybody out there can relate to in one way, shape, or form. When I was a command chief at Hill Air Force Base in Ogden, Utah, I had the second largest explosive ordnance disposal unit in the Air Force. And if you know about our recent conflicts, there was a lot of Air Force EOD guys out in front of Marines and Army folks just based on need. So out of that unit, we had lost three to KIA, and had a handful of Purple Heart recipients and a lot of PTSD. Well, that community, when they would lose someone, had a ritual. And the ritual was to lock themselves in a room with everybody in the unit. And everybody would contribute pictures of the individual that had been lost. And they'd make a slideshow, had music to it and everything. slideshow, families, picnics, training time when they were in, probably previous deployments, all that stuff. And they would watch this thing, and then people would get up and, kind of say how they were feeling. Now, this was just EOD people in a room. Well, I started off in the Air Force as a medic, and then I became an independent duty medic. So in the Air Force or in the Navy, they understand independent duty. The Army, it's kind of like 18 Delta guys. It's like Special Forces medics without all the other stuff that goes along with it. But you're doing patient care. You're trained to do patient care. Well, one of those is embedded with these units all the time. So being the command chief and in the position of responsibility and being the specialized medic that they understood, they invited me to one of these. Big deal, right? To be brought into that inner circle. And I figured it was one of those times where I needed to keep my mouth shut and just let it play out. And then if they needed something, they would ask. They asked me one question, Rick. They said, "How do you think we're doing?" And I don't think I even paused 30 seconds. I said, "I think you guys suck." I said, "You guys are in this room. You're trying to take care of each other. You're not qualified. You only cry in each other's presence, and you're not even doing that now. You think that the physical training is the answer to get rid of all your ghosts. So you do things like keep adding 10 more pounds to your pack and 30 more degree angle on the hillside, running up and down it." I said, "You're damaging yourself physically trying to chase your mental health stuff. And there's perfectly qualified people right here in your midst that could make that better." I don't think they liked to hear it, but they didn't disagree with me. And I could drag in my going away thing that they gave me, which is one of few Air Force kind of things that I keep hanging in my house. I've got a few things around, but it doesn't look like a 30-year retiree's house with everything up. So what we did, Rick, was I engaged with medical officers, and I said, these guys are just as specialized as pilots, and we've got all these programs for pilots. Why are we not doing this for them? And really long story short is that started a young officer who's now a general officer. It started her on this journey, and she changed the whole Air Force medical system to what used to be flight medicine for pilots is now flight and occupational medicine. And they've got all of this carved out for these type of people so that we can answer all of their trust issues. One is they didn't want to see 3 different people for the same problem. And you know that as well as I do. As soon as somebody says to me, "Tell me your story," or, you've got to go to the VA and it's a piece of paperwork or a benefit or something has to shift, and then you've got to get into the nitty gritty, I get irritated. I'm like, I have a relationship with somebody that helps me. They know all of this stuff, and I really don't need to be put through the ringer every time administratively I've got to meet some special criteria. It's painful for me, and I don't like to do it. And so these guys demanded that, and they do that. When they have a relationship with a provider, they do that. So why do I tell you that story in the bigger context? Well, how many people out in your listening world right now, me included 4.5 years ago, before I put the bottle down and put my ego down and stopped command chiefing myself and probably more daving myself, and because we got to be careful what we tell ourselves, because we tend to believe that. So
Yeah.
if you're going to talk to yourself, you need to make it goodness, and we'll talk a little bit about that from the book.
All right. So now,
go ahead,
because I didn't know we were going here.
Huh.
I've been sober going on 34 years, January 1st. And I've been, like you said, clean and sober since I'm 20 years old. And like they teach you in the rooms, you got to deal with life on life's terms. But now I'm not a professional, guys, and you guys know it. I'm only a 9th grade dropout. But I've had over 500 people on the show. And, I talk to them and they say, when an adult acts out, it's usually because of trauma from the ages of 3 to 13. Then you add alcohol to the mix. Then you add sometimes war, not all the time, but you add the military to the mix, and it becomes like the movie The Perfect Storm. And nobody can tell you how to get out of this perfect storm unless they've been in it. And that's where, guys like me and you, we can reach down, pull them back up because we've been there. But I wanted to hear from you, like a lot of times I know a lot of guys, girls that are struggling with PTSD, they go to the bottle. Me and you, that's not an option. So we got to deal with life on life terms without any chemicals. So what is that like from your perspective? Not not you can't just go home, have a beer, have a shot of whiskey. You have to deal with it and deal with life on life's terms.
Right. So first, I think you would agree. First is not a whole bunch of days go by where you don't want to go home and have a shot of beer and whiskey. Just that is still that's still there. PTSD, trauma, demons, as some of us like to call them, those things that we carry around with us that are never going to go away, right? Americans are odd with medical stuff because they want to take a pill, they want it to go away, or they want to have surgery and have it be taken out. And PTSD you can't see and you can't cure. It's there, and so you have to learn how to deal with it. So the answer to your question is I challenge everybody out there to just kind of think for a second, and you included. Think about how much energy PTSD generates. From the minute you wake up to the time you go to bed at night, and even sometimes in the middle of the night, think about how much energy PTSD generates. Well, one of the things when your mind's hyperactive like that, your whole physiology, your physical self is active like that. You have a couple of options. Learn how to use the energy in a positive way, or shut it off. The easiest tool that we have at our disposal right now as human beings to shut that off is alcohol. It is the ultimate switch. And alcohol is the most reliable thing in the world. It's your best friend. It's always there. It's always accessible. It always does exactly for you what you want it to do until it wears off, and then all that energy is back because you haven't shut the energy off. You've just kind of short circuited the synapse there. You kind of cut it off for a while with alcohol. So here's my choice. I quit drinking alcohol. I've got this energy. My demons are there. I have somebody that I can talk to that I trust that's been extremely helpful. And then I take the energy and I put it into something positive, which is something you and I are doing it right now. I've put it into the book, and we'll talk about the book when it's appropriate. But I put it into the book in a variety of ways. And it's funny you talk about early trauma because my book writes. I grew up on a dairy farm in Northern California, in the middle of nowhere, in a small town, and everything I needed to know in life I learned on that farm. I didn't realize it until I started to get out in the world and deal with stuff. And so there's a lot of stuff as a young kid that lessons on the farm that I would say directly contributed to getting my people to and from combat alive and well, just through some of that. And some of those are dealing with mental health. You know, if you take veterans out of it, the number one mental health problem in the United States of America is farmers. Their suicide rate's almost 50% higher than the rest of society. And it's because they have a lot of the same things going on that short of the things that you can't unsee, unhear, and unsmell, the stuff that most of us deal with as a medic, those are my things. I wasn't a squad level medic. I was on the receiving end of a lot of helicopters, the MASH China Beach kind of thing, and I was leading in that environment. So those are my visuals and my smells and the things that my triggers are cut around that. Everybody has their own set of things. Farmers do too. Farmers have certain times of year. Farmers have failure, but farmers have a lot of isolation. I'm up here in Montana, and if I see a place and I want to hunt and I want to pull in and talk to the farmer about hunting, you better have an hour because he's going to talk to you about something for an hour because he hasn't seen anybody probably for a week, not anybody new. So,
Yeah.
yeah, we've got to really, really, really talk to ourselves about where our energy is, and when that energy is there, what do you do with it, and how do you disperse of it in a positive way?
Like also, a lot of people that watch our show, I have a lot of first responders, a lot of medics, because we all, no matter what uniform we're putting on, we all see stuff that humans should not see, should
Right.
not experience. And a lot of people don't realize that the average age of a male in America that passes away is 78. The average age of a veteran or a first responder male that dies is 59 years old. It's almost 20 years difference
Yeah.
from, from the average Joe to first responders and veterans. So we're holding on to a lot of shit.
Right.
And now something that, because I teach a course, it's a 12-week course. And unfortunately, I can't say I made it up because I didn't. It all comes from, my time in recovery. I teach about the 3 pillars of forgiveness. First of all, we got to forgive those that have hurt us. Not forget, but we have to forgive those that have hurt us. And then we also have to ask for forgiveness for people that we've hurt. Now, most of all, and I think this is where a lot of us struggle, is like I said, we've seen stuff and done stuff that no human being should ever see or do. And we never forgive ourselves for it. So that's the most important thing. And the hardest part is to forgive ourselves, because it's kind of like I picture mental health like running on a treadmill. If I'm running on a treadmill and I got a rucksack on and the bricks keep going in, eventually it's going to get so heavy I'm not going to be able to even walk anymore. So, but I believe that once we can start, clearing out the wreckage of the past, we can start taking those bricks out one by one, and we can start running again. And I think without forgiveness and asking forgiveness and being forgiven, I think it's a really, really hard road to get to post-traumatic growth. What are your thoughts?
No, I agree, and that's a really high level of making friends with PTSD. You call it PTSG, right?
Yeah, post-traumatic.
I might start stealing that. I like that. You So my terms may not resonate with everybody, but they're mine. So it's kind of what I do to have my self talk. But I think in some ways, you have to make friends with it, right? It's like a horror movie, right? And the ghost comes out of the closet, and the person starts to have a conversation with the ghost, right? They say, "Hey, I'm friendly. I'm not here to hurt you." They've already accepted the fact that the ghost is there, but they're changing the narrative to make it a friendly ghost, or at least a friendly environment. They're giving the ghost the opportunity to just to coexist is what I'm looking for. So I think in where you're at is that's the highest level of that, or you're way at a high level of that, where you understand for you to be able to coexist with this in some healthy state, to live past age 59, in a healthy state where it's not affecting the people around you, and it's helping you to be able to function as normal as possible for as long as possible without setbacks. You've got to clear some of that baggage, because I don't think any of us sit around and dwell on our triumphs. If people ask me, I can tell them the story about the person that came in and was shot, and we did a great save, and they went to the operating room, and 3 days later they walked out. And I've got a lot of those stories, and I feel good about those, but I feel tremendously bad about, and I can give you the names of the ones that didn't make it that I still today don't understand. And so, first of all, I've got to forgive myself for understand, or I need to let myself be okay with the fact that, and I do know it, but you don't. Is It doesn't matter how well trained I was or how much I intervened, and I probably did everything exactly the way it was supposed to be done. It just didn't work out. I mean, that's just the way it is. In the book, I write about Nature's Way. There's a chapter. The chapters in the book are very short, so it's easy for people to read a chapter and then go to sleep. Uh, I write about Nature's Way, and you have got to make friends with Nature's Way. And as I've gotten feedback from the book, I've only had one person glom onto that chapter to talk to me about it. Everybody else kind of grazes over it because most don't understand it, Rick. And what I'm talking about is there's stuff that happens around us that we just don't control. And I think that's to your point, is you got to forgive yourself for that. And you've got to understand that some of that was just larger than you. Whatever was put into motion, you weren't going to be able to fix. But when you start running it through your head over and over and over again, you get to that point where you do this second guessing of yourself. And I think most everybody out there that functions at that level, if you are listening to them, I think the stuff that we did was heroic and Herculean, and would amaze most people that we even got to that point. And we don't give ourselves credit for it. And so we should be patting ourselves on the back for actually having the capacity to do that. And oh, by the way, go through it, go to bed, and get up and know that you might be right back in the same thing the next day.
And I love that. Like today, I got up and I did my cardio. I do my cardio every day, and I'm always listening to something. And I'm listening to David Goggins right now, and his story about you can't hurt me. And I think a lot of us, like I'm a 53-year-old guy. Now I'm out almost 12, 13 years. I forget that at one time I was a super soldier. That I was in charge of $100 million vehicle, being able to shoot a vehicle 4 miles away, in tip top shape. I forget sometimes that I was the warrior, and sometimes we need to. Like I did a video today. I didn't release it yet about how we need to go back to our warrior mentality. To we've done things like most of us have either went through basic or made a career out of the military. Only like 1% of the population has ever done it. So we need to start realizing that we're winners and start thinking about that warrior way. And I think, like you said, you start, certain things in nature, you can't control. Like in the program, they talk about, the serenity prayer. I have to accept what happens. I don't have to like it, but I have to accept it. Right. But I think, a lot of times we just have to have a buddy like me and you say, listen, be like, guys and girls that have been served in the military, we can walk up to each other and be like, hey, bro, you need to unfuck yourself.
Right.
And we get it. We were like, yeah, you're right. We need to, I don't think, if you get somebody at the VA that just got out of college and they're trying to tell you, well, you need to do this and do that. And you're like, well, who the fuck are you? You don't even know anything about me.
Right.
I think if there's more people like me and you be like, Dave, bro, I'm having a rough day. And you'll be like, get off your ass and do something. You know what I mean?
Well, and that happened. And I've got those people in my life that that when it pops up, I'll send a text real quick. And if I can get them away from what they're doing for 5 minutes, usually those people will drop everything. And I've got to say whatever. Yeah, I don't get cut any slack, right? I get told, that's not right. That's unsat, substandard, unsat. It's not gonna fly. And I appreciate that because you need to be regrounded. I guess my scary part to all of that is, Rick, is that we've got to work just as hard at finding the right help. So if you don't want the 22 something with a piece of paper that's just getting started out because you need a little bit more of understanding, that stuff's out there. Now, you got to go find it. And I'll tell you, even here in Montana, the VA here in Montana is wonderful. But my experience with the VA has been great.
Me too. I got no complaints with the VA here in New Jersey.
But my clinician, my therapist that takes care of me, doesn't know anything about the military. And in fact, sometimes I tell her I'm going to do reverse charges because she's got so many first responders and so many military people going to see her that I've had to draw organizational charts on the wall to understand. So she understands how the sergeant works for the NCO and the NCO works for the so that she understands that structure because they come in complaining about supervision and those kind of things. And but do you know why she's my clinician? You know why I have a relationship with her? Because she's Armenian and she grew up as a kid in the middle of a war as an Armenian kid. She's a war displaced Armenian whose family's still over there. In fact, that whole thing is kind of kicked back up. So when we talk, she's got some of the same issues, but as a civilian traumatized of being in a country that was being attacked. And she's also got the advantage of she's multicultural, she's multilingual. And so she understands what it's like to be in a foreign country. That's the other thing is we went to foreign countries where from the minute you walked off the plane, it didn't matter if you're getting shot at or not. You had to do a whole new set of learning and a whole new set of cultures and those type of things. That stuff's hard to balance. And so she's been extremely helpful. And I've sent some other people to her, and she's got a huge clientele of first responders. And I think that almost all of them have that relationship with her. They're comfortable with her for the same reasons. But you got to find it, right? Because you can go through 7 therapists, but you got to do step 1, Rick. You got to understand that the worst therapist you'll ever have in your life is you. It goes back to my EOD thing. So you asked the first question about resiliency. I don't think people can be truly resilient or balanced in life unless you have the right team. You just can't. You have to have a team. I'm going to teach this week at the mental health and suicide prevention conference at the universities, and I'm going to talk. A lot of it's on leadership, and it's going to be student leaders mainly that will attend my portion of it. I'll probably have some professors, but I'm going to talk to them about their checklist, their personal emergency action checklist. You know, it amazes me how people, you can go to a restaurant and sit down and somebody can pull up next to you in the booth or the table next to you on crutches, and you have no trouble asking that person what happened to their leg. And in fact, you probably get the whole story. Fell off a horse, got pins, 8-month recovery, blah, 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 whatever it is. If you see somebody that's down and depressed, people don't intervene. It's not natural for them. So you're not going to get, if you fell out of your car tomorrow in the middle of the street, somebody's going to stop and help you. That is just how it works. If you emotionally or mentally fall out of that same car, people are going to back away from you. So we have got to have a team. You have to have a team that's going to show up. We're used to that, right?
Yeah.
When you build a squad of soldiers, it doesn't matter if you're the E1 private first day on the first day in the unit or the squad leader. It doesn't matter because everybody's got a job to do and you're expected to do that job. And the only places that you look are your right and your left. Make sure that they're still standing up and that they've got your left or your right. That's how that works. Why don't we do that? Why? We're good at that. But when it comes to this thing, Rick, doggone it, we bail on ourselves. Go find a battle buddy, appoint him a battle buddy, and frickin' test him. When that private screws up and he doesn't have your 6 for a minute, what do? You rip his ass.
Chew his ass a little bit.
Yes, you rip his ass. And you say, hey, listen, buddy, this is a little bit bigger than you. And I'm not going to be running around, BFE with you. If you don't pull your head out of your ass, you got to have my 6. And it only usually takes one conversation. Now, think about the people like you and I. We're building a relationship right now. You and I, think about that. If I called you tomorrow and I said, Rick, I need somebody to have my 6. I'm getting ready to go do this. You'd probably say, Dave, I've got it. I get the potpourri of emails and phone numbers and everything that goes along with it. And I wouldn't be scared to use it. So why are we out there wandering around by ourselves? We got 3 friends, right? Jack, Jim, and Johnny. Why do we pick those people to be our friends? Why are we not doing? And I'll tell you, there's lots of organizations out there, and you and I could probably put down a litany of websites and stuff. It frustrates me every time that I call the VA, and the first thing on the phone is, if you're having thoughts of suicide, call this number. You're way late in the game. If you're on a VA number talking to a stranger that I don't know, think about that. We have trouble talking to ourselves, and they find that sufficient, that picking up a phone and talking to somebody. I hope it works for people. It's not the sexiest alternative to me. The alternative is to build teams like we know how to build teams. So I don't know where you're at on that. I'll let you go for a bit.
Now,
I'm curious to see what your listeners say, but it's a concept that I don't see us talk about enough.
All right. Well, first I want to thank our sponsors real quick before we get on. As you guys know, I'm always trying to pay it forward. I'm always trying to help other people. So I came out with a brand new coffee called Vertical Momentum Coffee. It's twice the caffeine, twice the energy, twice the taste. And the best part of it, 100% of the proceeds, 100% goes to help veterans struggling with PTSD and homelessness. So guys, almost everybody drinks coffee. If you want some coffee and you're not drinking the other coffee, you want some coffee with a mission, write coffee down below and I'll make sure you get the information. Now, I just got off the phone with my friend Stu Scheller. I don't know if if you know his story. He got locked up and he got thrown out of the military, for talking bad about how Biden and the Marine Corps shit the bed when we pulled out of Afghanistan. And he has a book out called Crisis of Command. And we just something that we talked about is I think now it's our leadership isn't as strong as it used to be. We're like if me and you hanging out, say if we're on my tank, we get in an argument, you do something wrong. All right, we take our jackets off, we beat the snot out of each other, go back, have a beer, talk about it. Now it's okay, I'm going to write a counseling statement. It's not the military that I know, to where I remember, I wasn't afraid to talk to my NCOs. I know they had my back, and it seemed like maybe it's just me. I'm the old guy now, but now I seem that the military is not what it used to be, and not a lot of people are watching each other's backs. They're just trying to get promoted, and I think that's why a lot of guys are afraid to talk because they're afraid. Wait a minute, if I talk, they're taking my weapon away. I'm non-deployable. My career's over. What are your thoughts? I know that's a lot, but what are your thoughts?
I'm going to get one of my books into the mail to you as soon as we get off of here.
Yeah.
There's a chapter in the book called Stop Desiring and Start Aspiring. What happened was, and I don't know, the enlisted corps kind of got officerized, and I got to see that. I got up in that rarefied air, Rick. I was dealing at those senior, everybody has an image of their command sergeant major or their command master chief or their command chief master sergeant. They have an image of that. And I'd like to think there may be somebody listening on here that knows me that would say, oh, hell no. I'd like to think that I kept myself in check pretty well. It is really easy to look up as a young person and say, I want to be that person. What was the motive? To be the command, if you wanted to be the command sergeant major, it was because he beat you by 15 seconds on your PT run. That's why you wanted to be the command sergeant major. Or you wanted to be the command sergeant major because you watched him actually make change in a unit for people. And you admired his leadership and lead all the cliche things, and leaders eat last. And how they led by example and those type of things. Somewhere the wheels came off. And I in the Air Force I've got examples. I can actually name the people. I was having this conversation earlier today with somebody. Somewhere somebody said, if you want to be a command chief master sergeant in the United States Air Force, here's what you need to do, and they gave them a list. You got to be the top 3 president. You've got to volunteer for this organization. You've got to talk to this, this person. This has to be shiny. You got to win this award. Definitely got to win this award. And we got out of focus, and we became careerists. And I remember in our PDG, the guide we had to study for promotion, they actually, towards the end of my career, they actually put in a whole section on there about how careerism is negative in the environment. Now, I don't think it's changed. So we stopped aspiring. We stopped wanting to be something and then doing the work to get there. And we started desiring things, and we wanted it handed to us. Or just tell me the 3 or 4 gates that I've got to jump through. Because, that's what they do with the officers. The officers have got gates that they have to get through. They have to have a certain PME. They've got to have a certain joint jobs. You want to be a general, you have to meet all the congressional things that even make you eligible for a nomination and from the president to serve as a general officer. And for some reason on the enlisted side, we started down that path. The other thing is that we have a history in the United States military, and it goes almost all the way back to when we were sailing the seas and around the coast of Libya, trying to keep pirates away. We have a history in the military of experimentation, be it social, monetary, or whatever, taxes, any of it, anything that looks like it may be something we want to try in our larger national environment. It goes into the military first. And I think that there's been a lot of stress and strain put on the force, focusing on things that has nothing to do with kinetics, because the job of a soldier, sailor, airman, marine, coast guardsman, and now our space command guys is kinetics. It's putting more heads on foreheads, is what we used to say, right? That's the job. That's where it all starts. For some reason, that's inverse. So what happens is you take people that are going through the military now, you make them wake up in the morning, and the first thing they think about is themselves. And when they go to bed at night, the first thing they think about is themselves. And everything else in between is just part of the job. And so why when you get out, if you've got any of these issues that we've been talking about, to include why when you're trying to start a business or get a job that's commensurate with the job that you had before, or get into an organization that speaks some language that makes you comfortable, why should we have any qualifications for that? Because what we've learned is how to eat first instead of last, how to make sure we're on the warm side of the tent instead of the troopies, and how to get ourselves promoted.
Yeah.
I don't know if you're reading lately, but we've got a big problem, and the recruiting. The Army's going to miss. The Army's going to miss the recruiting goal by 15,000 soldiers this year, and that's after they started accepting non-high school graduates.
But now let's talk about something real quick, because I had one of my great friends, Command Sergeant Major Mario Fields, and he went to his mental health checkups in full uniform, and I guess the lady at the front desk said, "Sergeant Major, why don't you come in your civvies? Maybe a private might see you." He says, "Exactly. I'm coming as a sergeant major to get my mental health right. And I'm becoming here because I want that private to see that it's okay to get help." And I think if a lot of the upper ranks would start saying, "You know what, guys, it's not just you that are suffering. We're suffering also." But I think a lot of us, when we get to a higher level, they'll start saying, "Well, now I got to play the political game." And they're afraid to say that they're struggling with their mental health. And then when you see an 07, 08, 09, all of a sudden take their life, and they wonder why. It's because they were afraid to reach out. Correct?
Yeah, I agree. And those happen. Good on that sergeant major. But that's the leadership. That's the people that are out there that understand the gravity and the weight of being a leader. I hate to shave. I always have. I just hated it. And I shaved every day like I was supposed to, but I hated it. And I'd let my beard grow out on the weekends. And I had an old crusty chief grab me one time. And he goes, "You're still a," whatever I was at the time, "you're still an E6 even on Saturday. So why do you look like that? Because you're on base and people are going to see you. And so you're always kind of on parade." So to your point is you have to have people that are willing to tell their stories, and you're doing it and I'm doing it. And that's probably why we're here, right? Making a difference every day. So this is where I'm at. I'm taking this energy, these demons want to run around on my treadmill all day and create a bunch of energy. Then I'll put it right into this. And I'll put them back where they need to go. And maybe I'll help somebody else deal with theirs, because that's absolutely a lot of what motivates me. And boy, you take away the alcohol and the hangover that comes with the alcohol, and then the need to start the alcohol earlier and earlier every day, because you got to have the hair of the dog just to kind of re-regulate yourself. You take away that, and you get to put all that brain power back into something that's positive. Yeah, you can start moving the world, and you can start saving lives.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Also, I want to talk about, I'm like I said, I'm very big in the mental health. I actually have my own mental health summit every September called "Today I Decide Mental Health Summit." And but I'm finding guys and girls that are getting out of the military nowadays, they don't want to go sit in the VFW or the AMVETS and get shit faced. they want, that's why the numbers in AMF and, all those veteran organizations, they're just dwindling, because now you're getting people, that guys and girls getting out of the military, they want to do something constructive. They want to go on, like I'm involved with a group called Irreverent Warriors. They want to go out and do things. They want to go out and experience life instead of just sitting at the AMVETS on a Saturday getting shit faced for $2 a beer.
Right.
Do you see the same thing coming down the pike?
Yeah, I mean, the dwindling of the legacy institutions that were founded and exist based on post World War I, World War II veterans, to include the Veterans Administration. The big hospitals and the veterans' homes and all that stuff. That stuff is all starting to wane because the need of today's veteran is different. But if you look at those organizations, they are organized, right? Think about how long it took to have the organizational structure that they have, the funding that they have, the branding that they have. They're embedded. There's a VFW in almost every community, right? Even though they're dying away, there's still a VFW in almost every community. That stuff's all there. So what does that look like now for post? One could argue that we came out of the Cold War in 1989 and we didn't stop until somebody could say when we came out of Afghanistan, that was a stopping point. I don't think that that's right. It's just that the average everyday citizen doesn't understand what we're doing in the world and where we're doing it. I mean, I went places that people still don't know. Just they doesn't even get through their head that we were there and we were doing stuff on parts of the planet. They think that we don't even have people. So, yeah. So what does that look like going forward? Well, it needs some organization, and I think they're out there. I mean, you're doing some stuff, right? And you've got your summit.
Yeah.
But what does that look like? What is the tent organization? And I'm not talking about nonprofit organization. I'm talking about what is the veterans organization that champions activist group to do things within communities that help address PTSD, veteran transition, reintegration, right? And two different things, because reintegration's tough. If you remember, you said you're 53, so you're 4 years younger than me. Post-Vietnam, so I'm a kid, so I'm about 5 or 6 years old, about the time the Dolphins are doing their perfect season, right? So
70, baby, 1970.
that's right. So they had a television commercial on that had a jingle. And the jingle was "Bet on a Vet, how lucky can you get?" It was sung that way. Well, that was the beginning. That was the foundations of some of these organizations that were trying to get veterans back to work, because post-Vietnam, nobody wanted to hire a veteran because they thought they were either baby killers, they were crazy. The stigma was bad. And the nation was trying to, one, get veterans back to work, and two, they realized what the value of the veterans. So I just met with one of our state senators here because Montana's veteran disability laws are a little bit behind. So I'm trying to help him do some amendments, and we're going to actually work on some stuff this year. So pray for me there, because if it happens, it'll be good for everybody. Get us in line with some other places. But we talked a little bit about this, and I said, why, as a state, and I'm just using Montana as an example. There's a lot of good about Montana, but everybody can get better. I said, why is a state like Montana, who has really realized population growth, especially since the COVID migration that pushed people all over the United States, and economics, right? So people are moving. We got a lot of people coming up here. I said, why haven't you positioned yourself so that when a veteran opens up a website on Montana, everything is there for them to compel them to come to Montana? You guys look at it as a cost on some tax relief or VA utilization. You guys look at it as a cost. Yet, what is the value of a veteran that walks a 4-year veteran, guy that serves 4 years? What does he come out with? He comes out with leadership. He comes out with strategic thinking. He comes out with problem solving. He comes out with team building. He comes out with morale. How to maintain morale, and he understands commitment. Why? That is an unmined resource in America now. We missed it. It's a swing and a miss. And so, that's one of my crusades now is we've got, because as soon as you make people aware of that and all of the attributes, I think that all of this stuff starts to coalesce around something that looks like the new VFW or the new, uh, you know, the Lions Club or the Elks or whatever. It looks like the new thing, and it's not. And it's not geared around the bar. When I went in the Air Force, people went two places. They went to the smoke pit and the NCO club. When I left the Air Force, they were going to two places. They were going to the gym and the education office. That's in 30 years.
Yeah.
So
Well,
I think that there needs to be some thought. And, if you really wanted to rally a cause, Rick, I think you take that all apart and you say, what is the national organization, the national campaign that champions veterans, transition, reintegration, and contributions, maximizing their abilities to contribute back into society? Because people will say forever and ever, why would I go in the Army and be a tank driver? What do I have to offer what do I have to do when I get out? You can run anything.
yeah.
You can manage 20 restaurants.
But I think, like for the last couple of minutes, I want to talk about, a lot of people that watch this are veteran entrepreneurs.
Okay.
And there's a company called Bunker Labs. They're great. They teach veterans how to open up businesses. And I think a lot of veterans, because we know so well about leadership, we know about SOPs, 9 lines and all that stuff, that we know that we make great entrepreneurs, because we know that, in the military, we train until the mission is done. We don't care about time. Right. And a lot of us, when we get out of the military, we go get a regular job. It's like, people get there at 9 o'clock at the water cooler, talk for an hour, take lunch, and then leave at 5. And the veterans like, we got so much shit to do, and you guys are going home. And I think that's why we make great entrepreneurs. So talk about what you think, what makes veterans great entrepreneurs.
Well, I think that they have the front end and the back end figured out without having to do much effort, right? Most veterans, when they come out, if they've got an idea, then they know what it needs to look like. They already have the vision. They already know what the end product looks like, whatever they're going to do. If they're going to build something, they already know what it looks like. In fact, they probably know the materials that it's going to be built out of and probably the processes to do that. And on the front end, they have the organizational skills, right? The ability to train, equip, organize, and execute from the beginning. So how many people do you need? How much stuff do you need? How much time do you need to get it ready and those kind of things? So I think they have huge attributes in that. In the middle, it gets a little squishy because it gets hard, and it goes back to the speed limit you just talked about. Because if you want to start a business, the majority of the people that are going to be your consumers are who? They're civilians, right?
Yeah.
And civilians move at a certain pace, and they're motivated by certain things, and their eye catches certain things, and they move towards stuff. And so you may have the best product in the world. In fact, it may be an invention that all of us need, the whole world needs. But if it's not marketed right, and if it's not sold right, and we try to market and sell and implement and execute in the way that we knew, it doesn't fit. You've got to go do the research, and you've got to understand the customer. So the customer is the variable. The customer blows up a lot of our ideology, right? Because you want to get out there and moving and shaking. So once you understand the customer, then all of those tools should put you miles ahead of anybody else, just through effort. Because anytime you start something new, look at what you're doing. Anytime you start something new, there's time and effort. And when you look back, you're like, man, I did that. I screwed that up. Shouldn't have spent that $2,000. Should have did one of these. All of that stuff is still going to happen. But you don't want to be on the back end and say, well, why did it fail? Or why am I not doing as well as I could? Because we made the assumption that our customers are from where we came from instead of trying to learn it. So it's no different than being 50 something and leading millennials. You may not like them, and you may not enjoy having to explain the why, but if you don't do it, you're going to be combat ineffective, and it's going to suck.
Yeah, I love it. So now, how do we find your book? Talk to us about your book.
Oh yeah.
And how do
the book is Giving Back: Life and Leadership from the Farm to the Combat Zone and Beyond. and it's a compilation. It's all Dave. If you're interested in Dave, you'll figure me out, and it has nothing to do with hero stories or running and jumping or medals that I won or received. Nothing. It has nothing to do with that. It has to do with growing up on the farm, the basics that come off of the farm. I believe everything in life kind of, you can learn it all on the farm, everything from life and death to trials and tribulations and struggles with economics and setbacks from Mother Nature. And it's all kind of there. And how it helped me navigate through the military, especially when I started leading people. It talks about some of my challenges, especially, I talked to you a little bit about alcohol, making the tough calls, being on the unpopular side of things, but it's the right side. Each chapter is short. There's just kind of short stories, and they end with little one-liners that hopefully make you introspective. The feedback I've gotten back from the book up to now is, geez, I had a fire chief that I worked with after I got out that read the book and he quit drinking and went and apologized to his wife. And my 88-year-old mother cried and said she needed the book 40 years ago. So there's a lot going on in there, and the book is truly about giving back. And I don't think that Rick, we should walk the walk that we walked in the shoes that we walked in, and have all of this stuff in our lives and not give it back. And you're giving it back, and I'm giving it back, and some of it's in the form of a book. And I've been given opportunities to teach now. I believe in younger people. I believe if they have the right people around them with the right influence, it doesn't matter what their mom and dad's politics were. If they're understanding the right things and they're motivated by the right stuff, the future is bright for our country. But I think people like us need to stay involved. So the book is there, Giving Back: Life and Leadership from the Farm to the Combat Zone and Beyond. Dave Nordel. That's DAVENORDEL or DAVID. If you type that into Amazon or Balboa Press or Barnes and Noble, it'll take you to the book. And I'm here in the local bookstores in Billings, and I'm doing an actual reading. I'm doing a reading this weekend. So no, I appreciate the time on the book, and I would hope that people would go out and buy a copy. A lot of people our age, Rick, that read the book, they immediately put it in the mail to their children. And so I think it worked.
I can't wait to get my copy. I'm excited.
Well, I'm going to mail you. I'm going to sign it for you, and I'll send it out to you.
When I wrote my book, my book is out. It's called A Hero's Journey from Darkness to Light. And it actually is my life story, but like yours, at the end of each chapter, it has a teachable moment. But the last two chapters are, what does depression look like? It's not what you think it looks like.
Right.
And then what does addiction looks like? It's not what you think it looks like. So it's actually a teaching book, and it's available on Amazon. I forget I even wrote it sometimes. And 100% of the proceeds go to help veterans. Right. Same thing with my T-shirts, my hats, everything I do, 100% goes to veterans. So I'm all about giving back. And like I was taught in a program, I can't keep what I can't freely give away. So I love everything you're doing, Dave.
Amen. Well, hey, listen, I track the book sales. So today's the 19th of September. So for the next week, whatever I make on the book, I'll donate it.
Oh, you're awesome, brother. All right. I love you guys. This has been an amazing episode. We went so deep into some different things that you normally don't hear on a podcast, because here we try to keep it real. We're not a lot of fluff. So, Chief, I just want to say thank you, brother. And now that we're friends, I hope we can build a generational relationship.
You betcha. Amen, brother.
All right, guys. So remember, pick up his book. Check him out. He's amazing. Check him out on LinkedIn. Got a great profile on LinkedIn. And just make sure that you guys, like Oprah Winfrey talks about, is the best way to help yourself is to help somebody else. Guys, and remember, vertical momentum, the only way to go is but up. And I'll catch you guys next week. All right. Have a great week, brother.
Take care, Rick. Thanks, buddy.